C'est tout bon, vous pouvez commencer.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Pleased to have my coffee with you this morning for the coming 30 minutes. I am Clotilde Annet, representing BeAngels, which is a leading business angels network active in Belgium, Luxembourg, and north of France. Our network is active since 22 years. We have over 300 angels who supports about 45 startups on a yearly basis. The theme of today's webinar is about international shareholding at early stage. And with me, Denis Monniot, CEO, co-founder of Rubyx, which is a fintech. He closed a couple of months ago a seed investment round with BeAngels, but obviously not only. Welcome, Denis. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your experience with the audience today. First of all, would you mind telling a bit more about yourself?
Hi, hello everybody, and thank you, Clotilde, for having me. Well, you already mentioned my name and Rubyx. So Rubyx is a fintech. Our mission is basically to facilitate the access of SMEs and entrepreneurs in emerging markets, to facilitate their access to funding. So we are Belgian headquartered fintech company, but primarily operating in emerging market and with a real focus on African markets. We have a cloud platform that enables banks and also digital platforms like e-commerce or payment networks to develop and operate digital loans for their customer base. So we are 2.5 years old, 3 years old now, in fact, and we score about 1.5 million SMEs and micro entrepreneurs over the world.
And what about yourself? Is it your first company? What is your background?
I've working in this industry called financial inclusion or microfinance. So it's basically banking for entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs in emerging markets since 2012. I was in charge of technology and product for a large microfinance group operating in China and Africa up until 2019, and then left the company and created Rubyx to keep focusing on that, but with a much stronger angle into AI and technology.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Rubyx was launched 3 years ago. It has an international market focused in emerging markets, mainly Africa. As a startup, you needed to fuel. You needed fuel to finance your development. What was your strategy 3 years ago? What was for you a must, an absolute requirement?
In terms of which investors you mean, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think when we started raising funds, I think the most important was not really just the money, but it was really also to we felt a little bit. So we started the company on our own funds, limited. We did some consulting. We did immediately focus on revenue. So it was not like we never had like pre-seed or very early stage round. We first 2.5 years with our own funds, right? So it was not so much about getting the funds, than it was about not remaining too isolated. In fact, that was really the key thing. Of course, funds would enable us to also change the model a little bit and go for longer term revenue rather than focusing on immediate revenue, which unlocks a lot of opportunities that we couldn't have without these funds. So giving us some time in between signing the contract and being able to adapt the conditions to the clients and not focus on immediate revenue. But more importantly, yeah, like I said, not being too isolated. We have looked for investors who were really interested in having us as a potential vendor and partner for their own existing portfolio company. So I don't know if this is exactly what's behind smart money, but for us that was really a key thing, is to open up and have other people also. I think we were reaching a situation where we were unsure about the different ways to go with our business at this point, the next step of growth, and there were multiple opportunities. And I think raising funds has also, and all the contacts and all the discussion that have happened have also helped us a lot in thinking about ourselves and making the right decisions about the way forward. Yeah, so that was the reason, that was the key thing, and therefore that implies a certain type of investors, right? And I think more than even just a certain type of investors, that implies a large, very large diversity of investors, because you will hear from people who industry, they will just ask very candid questions that are very interesting to have to answer, because nobody asks you these questions usually, because people know a lot of things, but having to explain it and hearing them, hearing their reaction to these things that seems very natural for us was very interesting. And also very specifically, very specific investors already very involved in our industry, to really also help us connect us with other vendors, compare us with competition and that sort of thing. So diversity was really the key for us, no?
So could you inform us which kind of nationalities you have in your capital today?
So we have Belgian. So that's because we are from here and we worked with you guys, BeAngels, and that attracted a number of Belgian investors. French also, because I think our network is naturally goes there, the language spoken, and also because my former employer was also headquartered in Paris, so I have a lot of networks there. So Belgian and France, and then we have Kenya-based investors, specifically focused on startups for African market. We have Senegalese investors, quite a large number of Senegalese investors actually. That's and we have South Korean investors with DeFi industry. So quite a large diversity, yeah.
So for you, France and Belgium wasn't that difficult to find, though. How you do not live in Kenya, in Senegal, in South Korea. How did you find relevant investment partner in countries that you do not know, where you do not live? How did you manage to get in?
Yeah, so part of the answer, there's two things, right? So number one, we can look at Korea, where actually indeed everything you said is absolutely correct. I don't know the country, never been there, and so I'm going to answer for your question also for the Korean investors. But I think also in Senegal and in Kenya, I mean, this is where we operate, right? So I'm currently in Senegal. We are constantly traveling there. It's been more than 10 years that we work here. So those are countries that we actually know and where we have relationships as well. So, but I think what has been amazing to see is that it was not so much about the geographies for the kind of business we operate in, but more about the industry. So in fact, where people were, as soon as you started just connecting with people who have a specific interest in that industry, who have investment in that industry, then crossing the border is not really relevant. It's actually, you got connected to someone and then on the phone you say, where are you? And then they are in Korea, but it's just, you didn't want to have them there. You actually don't, it's not really relevant that they are there for you. It's just that they, just like we are financial inclusion in Africa, it doesn't really make sense, but this is what we are been working on. So this is our industry. So same for these Korean investors, they are interested in emerging market and finance in emerging markets. So this is really about defining the industry much more than the geographies. And then from one investor, from one contact to another, you'd reach people, and you'd find yourself in geographies that you couldn't imagine because you've reached them not through the country definition, right?
So basically, you did not find them. It's rather related to the industry, the connection that people give you to them, and at some point you manage to be informed that they might be interested in financing your company.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, beside the different in profiles, you mentioned the high value of having people from the industry, but not from the industry as well. What would be the advantage of having international shareholders at your stage of development? Obviously, we would push that at a later stage. Should companies want to scale and to go to other countries, it makes sense to have international shareholders, though you just had your seed investment round. So which advantage do you see?
In fact, so it opens the territories when you, like, I feel if we look at this example of Kenya or Nigeria versus the Francophone West Africa, if you those are smaller, those are sub ecosystems of the industry, right? So if you want to go into and start offering a product in Nigeria, you need to understand, you need to have some contacts there, you need to have some local partners there, and this is very difficult to do if you don't have someone in your very close to you is interested about your company, is potentially one of your investors, to help you go there. So for us, if we look at again, this example of Korea is really somehow different, because this is a very good example of just, it illustrates the idea that it's just about the industry, and the fact that they are in Korea is really relevant. But then we have also these investors in these other part of Africa where this is very interesting because it opens the territory. We have now prospect and potential partners in Nigeria and in Kenya that we wouldn't have had if we were specifically in Francophone Africa, right? It's really a way for me to penetrate into these markets much quicker. Of course, we are B2B vendor, so we are not when for us entering a new market is not like going very to the public and start being known to the public. Then it's very different. When we are B2B, it's really about the network of companies you work with, the partners, the clients, and the investors who open you the door to these partners. So this is the key thing. And even it's really at some point it's a bit, we shouldn't go too far into that, because then people have some expectations, like, why have you still not done anything in Nigeria now, where we all understood you were going to be there, because that was in the discussion we had. We told you we're interested in having someone like you in our market, and so on. So I think try to add to this question is also this idea that it shouldn't be a purpose to go possible. Then it's also more complicated, create some expectations from people and so on. But then all the markets in which it is interesting to go for someone who's B2B, it's actually very interesting to have someone local there who's going to open you the doors to the partners, the vendors, the infrastructure, the regulation, all that sort of things in these markets. And we have the other situation where, for instance, we have a major client in India. None of our investors are actually Indian or interested in the Indian market. And then almost a question we always got was, why do you have that client? Are you sure this is strategic? Are you sure you should still work with this client? And does it make sense to also have this major client in India? So I think on both directions, the investors, for us at least, have been openers of markets, but also triggering this question of, should we go in these markets in which they are not interested? So yeah, that's for us really the dynamic that is going on between us and the investors in terms of the markets.
Regarding your relationship with your shareholders, because you are spread over the world, I believe you don't see each other very often in reality. Did you meet all of them face to face?
No, far from it. I think we've met. Yeah, no, actually, face to face. I don't. I think less than 20%.
Are there any elements in your shareholders agreement that you should not be overlooking with an international shareholding?
So we have a convertible. Sorry.
So what would be your recommendation should the audience want to have international shareholding? Where should be their focus on?
I don't feel like giving recommendation on that one, but I can give you. I can say a few words. Number one, I think it's quite important. We have signed a convertible note, so we haven't actually opened the equity yet. They will be converted later. So that was also something important, was to say, okay, for us to start, and with such a diversity of people, we cannot afford having something too complicated. We need to do something super standard. So we took the idea of the safe from Y Combinator. We adapted it into the Belgian market. Just a small comment here is that we should not we should never think that a contract is, or even a simple contract like the safe or convertible note is automatically something you can sign in any country. I was quite surprised to talk with our lawyer and understand that on just a few little things they couldn't fit with the Belgian law, and therefore we had to adapt. But these things were little but very key to the whole agreement. So this is a thing. So to say, and then of course the international investors used to their regulation or used to the safe or things like that were sort of, there was a small tension at one point about the little things I needed to change from the safe in order to make it compliant with the Belgian regulation on the matter. So that's quite an important thing. Then I say the second thing, the middle of it. I think all the investors thought that it was okay for them to go and sign a convertible note for a small amount in Belgium right now. But most of them have also raised their expectation that we would move the company later. And I think I'm not quite clear on that. I don't feel specifically comfortable with the idea, because I think the motivation is just the fact that they don't know our market, our regulation, much more than being justified by the fact that our market would not be a good fit for their investment. So I think there's the wind is blowing in all directions, and we need to be very strong about, does it make sense to follow that? Everybody wants us to go, I mean, to go in the US because it's so, in the Delaware because it's so simple, quote to quote, and it's just a thing to do, and because they are all international, it could be a very easy thing to do, to say to follow that direction. But maybe it's actually more complicated for us, and maybe it's just certainly it's more cost to to move the company and have then all these things to keep it track of in the US, where it's a market that is absolutely not interesting to us. So and like I feel also like there is a this thing that when you are a small country like Belgium, don't want to spend the time to understand your own regulation and just compare whether it's a fit or not. So they would just tell you, just go somewhere else. So and there are so many of them. So I think this is a risk of following that too quickly where the wind blows. And certainly we'll have to be strong and have some tough in the next round to justify whether or not we stay in Belgium, and else what the opportunity brings if we don't stay in Belgium. So, and I think if you operate on one market, you investors on that same market in majority, then that whole question does not exist at all. Everybody would agree that this is where we all live, this is where we invest, so it's absolutely fine. So that international, like we have all these possibilities. Like for them, it's what does it mean being an international company? Like we don't have anything in Belgium. We don't have one specific country. I mean, we don't have anything. We don't have any clients in Belgium, sorry. And so when you are up in the air, remote digital company with a cloud platform, international investors, you feel like where you lose a bit the sense of where do you belong. And it's not just words. It's like, where do you actually, are you sure of the market you are putting this company and growing your company, you see? So this is seriously difficult and something we have to navigate through.
You mentioned earlier your lawyer. Probably he is a key success as well for the success of your fundraising, because he used probably to work with international shareholders. Is it something that all entrepreneurs should really pay attention to in their strategy, to find a good partner in helping them moderate, understand each other importance?
Yeah, this is in fact, this is a very good question, and this is a very tricky answer, I think, because it depends on the choice you make finally. So if you decide that you are gonna stick to your country, then you don't need someone who knows so much the international business. You need someone who's very good in your country to give all the very precise, so that you are sure of yourself when you talk to your investors about the regulation, about what can be written. And if something cannot be applied in your country, you should make sure you know it in advance, and you should also know what you have to and in these negotiations with the investors, why sometimes you can't accept something, you need to be able to explain it. So if you choose to stay in your country and you can be confident of that decision, then I think it's that was our case basically. Then we are our lawyer is very good for the Belgian law, so he can of course and understand the difference with the others, but he doesn't know, he cannot advise us about how it, or France probably yes, but how it would be in the US or in Mauritius. So this is one thing. Then if we are not sure about this decision, or if we have the decision to go elsewhere, I'm not experienced into that, and actually I think I'm a bit scared about that, because most of the lawyers are still that I have met, at least, are still specialized in one geography. So you have to first choose your geography, I feel, and it's not very often. I mean, at least that with the kind of service we can afford, it's very difficult to have people who know multiple markets, can compare them with one another and so forth, like quickly, who have actual experience into that, at least for the kind of lawyer we can have as a startup, I guess.
Very interesting. What would you do differently should you could go back 12 months ago?
Certainly start earlier. Do not underestimate the time it takes to conclude the small things. No, I think one thing, not so many things. I think we are happy. It took just a little bit too much time and too much, but it was still an interesting exercise. We accepted a lot of contract counterparts on the contract. So there was there's actually a large number of signatory on the convertible note. I think it's 13 parties on the contract. A number of investors couldn't put themselves together and just had to sign each individually. And so we were a bit scared about that. Well, now it's okay. It seems it's okay. We'll see until the next round, but I think naturally the very small investors have also understood that they were small and that it was best for us to then follow and not be too demanding in terms of reporting, communication, and so on. And the big ones are clearly doing the lead. So we were afraid at one point that that could be an issue. But at the end, if things are clear about what the investors on the contract, it's pretty good.
Thank you so much, Denis. I see that there is only 4 minutes to go, so let's try to answer the questions we have. The first one from Loic. Denis, from your point of view, does companies have to go international to interest the foreign investors you mentioned? So I suppose the question means, should you want to have that emerging market? No, maybe Loic, could you rephrase the question? And in the meantime, we'll go to the next question. Do you have an in-house lawyer or hire transactional firms?
We don't have in-house lawyer, but we have a lawyer that works with us on all our matters, right? So it's not just for that transaction. It is really for all matters we have. So from contracts, terms and conditions, incorporating the company, shareholder agreements, all that sort of things, as well as the convertible note. So for us, it's important to have someone that you have very long experience with, that knows you well, and that you trust, really. Like, not just, for me at least, it's important not to have someone who's just there for the fundraising and this aspect, because yeah, knowing, being able to understand what we say in the context of who we are and what we do is quite important. And I think, Loic, it's hard to say. I think generally I would advise to say that these investors, yeah, they would not be extremely interested if they are foreign and you only do your country. That maybe makes less sense. So I don't know if you have to. On the other hand, I also see here a lot of investors who are directly African-focused investors who were extremely interested in Rubyx because we are African-focused, and that was somehow different for them. I think, in particular, in our experience with BeAngels, we were certainly the one of the very few ones to tell them, like, to take them travel with us, you know, like not literally, but to bring something very different, to say, okay, we are pitching here in Brussels for BeAngels, but we are actually operating in Africa, and so that's a very big difference for you. And that for them was something very very interesting. Yeah. So I don't know if that precisely few hints about what we.
Are there any extra questions from the audience?
If your current business is in France, even if the potential market is more global, now yeah, that is something I could not answer. How to attract investors in France? This is way beyond what I would feel comfortable talking about. Sorry about that. I think there is a demand, there is an appetite for French or European investors in general to go in emerging markets. That's for sure. That's what we've seen, and people were really keen. They liked this idea. When we, like I said before with BeAngels, like when we go into the very national angels ecosystem and we tell them, okay, here is what we do, and that's where we go, then they were very, very, very keen on our on this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Denis. It was such a pleasure for me to interview you and to understand more about your fundraising strategy. Feel free for the audience to follow us on LinkedIn, to contact us should you want extra information, Denis or myself, regarding BeAngels. We are more than pleased to guide you. I believe it's 30 minutes. The 30 minutes have been passed. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.